Do a little guitar video here. I'll show you one shit that I practice, basically. It's what I like to make these videos about. Shit that I try to wrap my head around. So anyway, what I've been fooling with here lately are rootless dominant chords. And especially in a minor key sense. Being used as a 5 chord, as a dominant chord in a minor key. You know, and blue bossa is just this go-to chord progression that I tend to use to try and practice this. You know, it's in C minor. And, you know, let me go ahead and just loop one here. One example. 2, 5, 1. Okay, that's beginning of blue bossa. Now, that 5 chord that I played there, it's not just a G7. Could have just played a G7. It had been a D minor 7 flat 5 to a G7 to the C. I didn't do that. I played a rootless G7, and what I did is I replaced the root, I replaced the G with an A flat right down here. Is what I did. I could have played it up here too. What that does is it makes this chord, it gives it a dual personality now. Not only is this chord playing the role of a 5 chord, a dominant 5 chord, now it's a dominant 5 chord, but it's in the shape of a fully diminished chord that can move all over the guitar, and it can move 4 frets, and it just creates inversions of itself up and down the neck every 4 frets. It's basically what happens. So you end up being able to use a fully diminished scale whenever improvising over this chord now. You can use the harmonic minor scale. Works great over it. And it works particularly well with blue bossa because it's got a Latin sound, and blue bossa is like a bluesy Latin thing. That's, you know, blue bossa, like a bossa nova. So even the melody of blue bossa falls right in with the idea of harmonic minor. Just the way harmonic minor was conceived of was moving one note in order to compensate for the fact that there is no dominant 5 chord in a minor key. So you move one note, you take that minor third of a G minor, and you make it a G dominant 7. What you're doing is you're moving a minor third to a major third, is all you're doing. That's what harmonic minor is. It creates a gap, a 4-note gap, and then you fix that 4-note gap by creating the melodic minor, compensates for that. So then this is the levels of what they go through to compensate for a dominant 5 chord in a minor key. First you fix it, and then you have to try and fix your fix, and you come up with melodic minor. And each one of these changes to these is making modes that are totally different, that work over totally different types of chords in different ways. So it completely changes the whole game. Alright? So anyway, I won't go too deep off into that shit. That's a theory thing that, you know, this whole idea kind of revolves around that, though, so you have to mention it. So anyhow, when I play over this now, to improvise over it, I'm going to play 90% of this is just C minor. I'm just playing C minor scale. That's all I'm playing. But when it comes to that 5 chord, I have to compensate, and because this 5 chord is rootless now, and that rootless shape is the same shape as a fully diminished chord, I can actually use the diminished scale to play over this now. So now I'm playing over a dominant 5 chord with a diminished scale. It gives it this weird duality to it that's like what makes jazz sound cool. What makes minor 2 5s so tricky. Why I practice them so much. Because there's a lot of theory involved and a lot of shit you got to kind of wrap your mind around whenever you start tweaking these chords, when you start altering dominant chords, especially in a minor key. It takes it to another level. So anyhow, here's C minor. So that's using the diminished. Gives it a weird sound. It's a little tricky. You got to kind of figure out where to wrap it up and go back into that C minor, and you've got to try and hit a C minor chord tone if you can. You don't have to. I find that whenever you're playing solo like this, if you can hit a chord tone coming back into it, it sounds better than if you don't. It's easier for me to stay on top of it, of where I'm at in the chord progression and all this kind of shit. If you're playing with other people and they're playing chords, if you just play something back in the scale, in the parent scale that you're dealing with, you know, the C minor, you just get a note back in there, usually it'll work because you're hearing the chords, you're hearing somebody else playing the chords and you're putting the two together. It's an ear thing, an ear training thing. But anyhow, that's doing it that way, using the fully diminished now, because you've changed that chord and give it a dual character. It can be played with that fully diminished scale, or you could use this harmonic minor where it's just one note is changed, but it has a flat 9 in it too, so it works. So you get something like this. So you can see how well harmonic minor is just one note off from the C minor. It's just one note, but it's the note that matters. It's the fucking note that matters, and that's the reason it seems to fit so well. Fits like a glove, and plus it's got that Latin feel, you know, because Blue Bossa's got the Latin thing, that long jump that the melodic minor compensates for. That long jump gives a bit of a Latin twang to it. Now, I'm going to see if I got time before my battery runs out to go into another example of this duality of dominant chords whenever you take the root out of the picture. Okay? I'll do the same thing, but this time I'm going to play, it's going to be a G7, flat 9, sharp 5. But what this does is it makes it into the shape of an F minor 7 flat 5. So now we can play the Locrian. The Locrian is what you would play over half diminished chords, you know, in the major scale. That's what you'd play over that. But, you know, this is taking the place of a dominant 7. But you still can do it because it has that shape. And it has this dual personality now. Because it's in the shape of one chord, but it's playing the role of another chord. Because it's just an altered dominant, you know. So here we go. Same thing. Same progression. It works. That was a very fucked up example. That was a little better. That's using the Locrian, which takes a little, you know, I just don't do it that way. I would normally use what would be the alter dominant scale in that situation, you know, because you're thinking of it as an alter dominant chord. But like I say, it takes the shape of a different type of chord. So you're able to kind of come at it different ways. This is the way I would normally tackle that shape. It has a different feel, and it works kind of like the harmonic. It just flows with me better because that's the one I tend to go to. But it shows you that it can be used. These chords now take on a dual personality. Now, you could go into a whole nother. I mean, this is dealing with dominant 5 chords. There are other roles that chords can play. You could be talking about a 1 chord and making it rootless and doing it in different ways and coming at it in different ways and thinking about it in different ways. And this is kind of the difference between, classical music theory where everything has to fit together perfectly and there's one way to kind of think about it, one way to do it. And then jazz theory where it's like, if you want to do it like this, you can do it like this, or you can do this, or you can do that, and then it changes the nature of this chord, and it gives it this dual row, and then you can come at it two or three different ways, and and then you start blending these ideas together. It's like, well, this one is a Locrian, and you take your Locrian, and then the altered dominant scale, we can take the altered dominant and the Locrian and see what they have in common and make a scale out of that, and then we'll use that, and we'll write a song with that scale, and we'll stick to those tones, and it'll have all the tones and everything. It gets on a fucking level of jazz theory that is insane. It's not quite like classical music theory where everything has to, fit like a glove, Anyhow,